Hello, everyone, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and I have a mission if you choose to accept it. This is our Mission Impossible film ranking episode. We are going full Mission Impossible for this edition of Movie Goodness. In celebration, I guess you can say, or preparation, however you want to slice it up, for the eighth installment. Yes, eighth installment of this franchise, Mission Impossible, the final reckoning, which comes out on May the 23rd. This is a franchise that I have loved from the very beginning. I've loved everything about Mission Impossible because it was a mixture of genres that just check all the boxes for me: spy, thriller, action, globe trotting, these beautiful locations. It just checked all of those boxes, and of course has probably one of the greatest theme songs of all time. That I don't care where you're at or what age you are, what race you are, what creed, sexuality, whatever, you know the Mission Impossible theme. And you know immediately what it represents. So it is a storied franchise, not only film wise, but this goes back all the way to the 1960s. Back in 1966, when the TV show premiered on television screens, and based on that, we got this storied franchise in cinematic history, Mission Impossible, starring Tom Cruise. He also produced this franchise, and this was back in 1996 when the first film came out. It was a phenomenon. Even though it wasn't super well received, that film, it was a phenomenon because it was based off of an IP that is familiar with a lot of people. And you have Tom Cruise, who, Tom Cruise always been a star, but Tom Cruise haven't been in a property like this, an action property like this. So it was a lot of eyes pointed to this. Then you have Brian De Palma directing this film, who is a well-known, well-respected in some circles filmmaker making this movie. And it kind of took the world by storm. But like I said, it wasn't super well received, but it was received well enough to spawn 7 sequels over the span of what, 30 years, close to. So it is a mainstay in pop culture. And while I was preparing for this show, of course, had to rewatch all of the Mission Impossible films, which wasn't a chore. It was actually exciting. But I come to realize when I started with the first one, and when I realized that movie came out in 1996, and the new movie is coming out, in a few days, and I'm like, man, I was in high school when the first Mission Impossible movie came out. I was a junior, I think. Yeah, I was a junior in 96. And I'm like, man, I am old. But if I'm old, my God, Tom Cruise is ancient. He's an artifact at this point. I mean, for 30 years or 29 years, this movie has been a part of our pop culture zeitgeist, and it's wild to think that a movie franchise can last this long and be as successful as it is. Of course, we have cinematic universes now, so it's not like franchises don't exist these days. You have the MCU, you have DC is just getting started. Well, it hasn't officially started yet, but you have that. Even the MonsterVerse, they have with Godzilla and Kong, it's it has a cinematic universe. So to have a franchise like this, where it's based on one guy, it's centered around one character, Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, and you follow him on these different missions every single movie, and it's like episodic television in a sense, and it's based off of an episodic TV show, so it all makes sense, and I really do enjoy this franchise. I enjoy Mission Impossible. I enjoy Tom Cruise in these films. And I must say, I'm gonna be sad to see him go whenever it ends. I know that this new one is kind of, rumors are swirling. This is the last go around of Ethan Hunt, last go around of Tom Cruise in this particular role. But I'll believe it when I see it. I don't, and it's not because I'm holding on to him. I just don't believe it. Because let's be honest, Tom Cruise hasn't done anything particularly well outside of this, with the exception of Top Gun Maverick. But you gotta kind of throw nostalgia to that. A lot of people were excited to see Top Gun return, and it was an excellent film. It deserved all $1 billion that it grossed. So I'm not hating on that. But apart from that, what else? What else has Tom Cruise done that was successful? He tried that Mummy movie, and that was horrible. Edge of Tomorrow was good, but nobody went to go see it. And, he doesn't really have anything outside of Mission Impossible, and so it's gonna be kind of hard to see him walk away. But at the same time, Tom Cruise, he's not a spring chicken anymore. He's not. He's a little long in the tooth, and it's probably time to walk away, because I noticed in the last film, in Dead Reckoning Part 1, he just looked old to me. He just didn't look like Tom Cruise. Yeah, he was still doing the crazy stunts, and he was still running. He could still outrun me. Let's not get him mistaken. But it was just the look. He just felt old in that movie, and I'm curious how this final film, The Final Reckoning, how this is going to play out in theaters. But that's neither here nor there. We have a ranking, and I had a lot of fun doing the rankings previously. I just recently did one for Final Destination. All of those films, put those in a ranking system. And, when I do these, when I do lists like these, it's fun when I'm recording it, but not while I'm arranging them. For instance, this is my third recording of this episode, and I hope it's the last. But this is my third recording of this episode, because I had a list, I did the list, and while I was doing it, my list changed, and I was like, wait, no, I can't have this at 2. And this, no, I can't have this at 6. And, it was a mess. It was a mess of an episode, and I couldn't release it. So I'm redoing it again. The first time, the file got corrupted, so I'm not counting that. But the second time, the last time that I was doing this, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. And so I took a step back. I said, look, Kevin, relax. Let's do this list. Because I was kind of rushing to do it, because I just wanted to get it out. Because in my head, I knew the order. And I played it in my head. I rewatched the films, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's right. But when I got to talking, and I guess I convinced myself otherwise, I debated within myself, and it was kind of a therapy session. I probably should have recorded that episode, but or released that episode, just so y'all could got a kick out of me arguing with myself throughout. I don't know how long it was, like 40 minutes, 45 minutes, but it probably would have been entertaining to y'all, but not to me. So I said, nah, I couldn't do it. But I went through the list in my head, and I was like, yeah, that's right. So I wrote it down, I wrote it down like 3 or 4 times, to see if it made sense. And it all made sense. It all connected. And I had my points to it when I wrote it down, but I never spoke it out. Sometimes when you sound stuff out, it kind of clears your head and you can get some clarity and you can think clearly. I've noticed that as of late, as I'm getting in touch with my mental health, and I'm like, okay, I'm recording the episode and I'm saying this out loud. And when I'm saying it out loud, no, that doesn't make sense. Why would I have that at 6? you know? And then when I get higher up the list, I'm like, no, the logic doesn't make sense. Why am I putting it up here? I'm going to put it down here. And so I had, short story long, I went on ahead. I stopped the episode and I redid the list and went over it again. I pulled the Santa calls. I made my list and I checked it twice. And this is it. This is the list. I'm locking it in. This is, this is it. And the crazy part, it was only 2 films. Everything else lined up, but it was 2 films. And I'm going to tell you which 2 when I get to those 2. But it was 2 films that were fighting with each other. And I know you probably think I spoiled it by saying 6 and 2 and all that. No, it is not. It's not those. But it's crazy how 2 films threw off the whole thing for me to the point where I was virtually going insane. I was going insane. It was an impossible mission to try to put this list together. But here we are. Here we are with this list. But before we get into it, let's give you a little backstory on Mission Impossible. Like I said before, this film franchise is based off of a TV show that came out in 1966 that was created by Bruce Geller, and the series is mainly produced by Tom Cruise. He started off. This was his first production under his production company. He had the rights to Mission Impossible, and not only did he produce it, but of course he starred in it as Ethan Hunt, an agent in the Impossible Mission Force, the IMF. And the film has had a variety of directors, writers, and it was scored by different composers throughout this film franchise. It started in 1996. It follows the mission of the IMF's main field team under Ethan Hunt's leadership to stop an enemy force and prevent an impending global disaster. The series focus on Ethan Hunt's character mainly, and like the TV show structure, it is comprised of an ensemble cast, such as the character of Luther, played by Ving Rhames, and Benji, who is played by Simon Pegg. They have recurring roles throughout this franchise. Ving Rhames, along with Tom Cruise, are the only 2 actors who have been in every single one of the Mission Impossible films. They were there from the beginning, back in 1996. Everybody else came in part 3. I think Simon Pegg came in on the 3rd one and has been a part of it ever since. Rebecca Ferguson, she came in part 5, and Vanessa Kirby came in part 6, and so on and so forth. But the 2 mainstays have been Tom Cruise and Ving Rhames, and it's crazy to say that, because Ving Rhames, in that first, I thought he was gonna die, because in movies around that time in the 90s, normally when you have one token black character in the film, he's the one that's gonna die, and he didn't. And what makes this franchise so funny, they kind of tease him dying in almost every single film, but he never does, and you kind of cheer for that. At least I do. I'm like, yeah, he survived this one. But we'll see how the final reckoning go. I don't think everybody's coming out alive in the final reckoning, but we shall see. But the series has experienced generally positive reactions from critics and audiences. It is the 17th highest grossing film series of all time. It has earned over $4 billion worldwide and is often cited as one of the best action franchises to this date. I can somewhat agree with that because think about it. What other action franchise has 8 films that were all, I would say, 90% successful as far as box office returns are concerned? Not too many. And not too many have 8 films in it. And so, yeah, this is a storied, historic franchise. So, without further ado, let's get into the rankings. Let's start from worst to first, I guess you can say. I don't hate none of these movies, which was part of the struggle. I don't hate none of these movies. Now, I can acknowledge some are better than others. And number 7 is not good, but is entertaining. Whereas I talked ad nauseum about my struggle placing these movies in certain areas on this list, number 7 never moved. Number 7 was at number 7 before I even started rewatching these movies because I didn't need to watch it again. To be 100% honest with you, I rewatched 6 of the 7. The one I didn't rewatch was this one because it's that bad. And it is none other than Mission Impossible 2, which came out May the 24th, 2000. It is directed by John Woo, who is an awesome director. He's an awesome action director. You know, he has given us, and I'm just going to go over the American films that he made. Hard Target, once again, not a good movie, but it is probably one of the best guilty pleasure movies on God Green Earth. It is that it's just so entertaining. That's the movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme. It was filmed here in New Orleans at a time when no movies were made in New Orleans, but that movie was. And it was just pure action. And that's something that John Woo is known for. I've never watched a John Woo film and thought that I would get a good plot or good acting or good story until I saw Face Off. And a lot of people don't like Face Off, and for the same reasons I described Hard Target. But I disagree. Face Off was amazing to me. Face Off is one of the best action movies I've ever seen. I know I probably lost all credibility with with a large portion of this audience, but I really loved Face Off. I liked Broken Arrow. You know, once again, not the greatest of movies, but the action was exciting. And so when John Woo decided to come aboard Mission Impossible 2, and we're coming off of the first one where it's this spy thriller, espionage, and, you know, kind of taking his time, slow pace, slow burn, and we get this action-oriented film. And now in the year 2000, that's where a lot of movies were heading. You know, it was just pure action around this time. We're what, a year removed from the Matrix and all this here. Even though the Matrix had story and substance, this didn't. This was just, I don't know, man. I don't know what the thinking was in this movie. There was no plot. There was no story. There was nothing. I couldn't tell you what this movie was about. And I know what y'all saying. Well, you should have rewatched it. No, it still wouldn't have helped. I watched it before, and I still didn't get the story. Yes, I know about this virus thing, and once again, around the late 90s into the early 2000s, every action subplot or the MacGuffin dealt with a biochemical virus type situation. And so they threw that in here, and it's just, it made no sense. It made absolutely no sense. This movie was boring. You know, you ever watch action? And if you're an action nut, you probably know where I'm coming from here. You ever watch an action movie where there is so much action, it is boring? That's this. You can have too much action. You need a break. And this movie didn't give you a break. It was just too much action. And it wasn't any exciting action. It was just generic action, chases and shootouts and whatnot. Yeah, the fight at the end was, was what it was, but it wasn't even a exciting climactic fight at the end. They're fighting on the beach in the sand. And what makes it so bad, Doug Ray Scott, who plays the villain here, the shoot lasted so long on Mission Impossible 2. He was originally cast as Logan in the first X-Men film. He couldn't do it. He had to drop out of X-Men because he was still shooting this movie. And who was waiting in the wings? Hugh Jackman. And that's how Hugh Jackman got the role of Wolverine in X-Men, because Mission Impossible 2 was doing reshoots, was over schedule, over budget, and all this other good stuff. And it cost Doug Ray Scott the opportunity of a lifetime to play Wolverine in X-Men. And the rest is history. That's the only thing notable about Mission Impossible 2. The fact that it ruined this man's career. I shouldn't say ruined his career, because he's still working to this day. I saw a movie he was in recently on Netflix. But he could have been a star. I mean, look at Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman is, of course, he is Wolverine. I guess it all worked out. It all worked out in the end. I don't know how Doug Ray Scott would have been as Wolverine, but we'll never know, thanks to Mission Impossible 2, the worst film in this franchise. Coming in at number 6. And now, this isn't, it's ranked at number 6, but it's not close to 7. There's a large gap between 6 and 7. And, because everything else is pretty awesome going forward. Everything else is rewatchable going forward. But I had to put them in some type of order, so here it is. Coming in at number 6 is the 5th film in this franchise that came out in 2015. It is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This is the first film that Christopher McQuarrie directed. He directed every other Mission Impossible film after this, including The Final Reckoning, which comes out in a few days. But this was his first foray into the Mission Impossible world. He worked with Tom Cruise in the past, so they had a relationship. I really liked Rogue Nation. Rogue Nation was a cool concept within his own right, because you have the IMF going up against the syndicate, which is I guess you could say the anti-IMF. It was the yin to the IMF's yang. They were this rogue government agents, that were causing chaos, whereas the IMF are rogue government agents who are trying to save the world. So they were going up against this rogue nation, and I thought that was cool. The reason it's kind of low on the list is because I wanted to see more from this rogue agency. The setup. I wanted to see a better setup from this nefarious group, and we didn't get that. We focused a lot on Ethan Hunt, which all the movies do, and I get it. It's Tom Cruise. I get it. But there were some amazing action sequences in this film. We get the introduction of the beautiful Rebecca Ferguson in this film. We also get the introduction of a recurring villain in the franchise, Solomon Lane, played by Shane Harris. I'm sorry. And, that was a extra good touch as well, because it was a cerebral thing. And a lot of the villains that Ethan Hunt goes up against are more cerebral than they are physical threats. They're more psychological threats than actual physical combat. threats. Now they can go toe to toe at times, but it's more of a mental game, and that's what makes this such a good franchise, because I love the villain. The hero is only as strong as the villain, and if you got a weak villain, you can't really get behind the hero, because that the hero is going to triumph at the end. But if you have a villain that is as cunning as a Solomon Lane is, you start to question, like, man, can Ethan Hunt get out of this? Because he is step to step, or at least 2 to 3 steps ahead of the IMF and Ethan Hunt. Every move he makes, he knows Ethan Hunt backwards and forwards, so what can Ethan Hunt do to get out of these situations? And that was the exciting thing about Rogue Nation, and made it more entertaining than what it really needed to be. But it was really, really good, and earns its spot at number 6. Coming in at number 5 is the one that started it all. It's a no-brainer. It is Mission Impossible from 1996. This movie, I think I'm maybe one of the 6 people who actually liked the first Mission Impossible. A lot of people I talked to did not like the first Mission Impossible. I remember, there's 2 stories coming out of this, but I could tell you the first one was in high school. Like I said, God, man, saying that out loud makes it even worse. In high school, when the movie came out, I was in video club in high school, because I wanted to make movies. So we didn't have a filmmaking class, so we had video club. So I was in video club, and of course, video club is full of geeks and nerds, which I am one. So I'm not teasing them. I am one. But they had one guy, and he's this, I guess he's a cinephile. At least he thought he was at the time. And we're sitting in class, and Mission Impossible had just came out. And of course, I went to go see it that weekend with my dad. And that's the second story, but I'm going to get back to that. But I went to go see it. Got to school that Monday. We're talking in class, and everybody's talking about Mission Impossible. And I'm hyped up. I couldn't wait to join in and talk about how exciting it was. How exciting that final showdown was on that bullet train with the helicopter and all this here, and the Dutch angles, and the all of the good qualities that I enjoyed about the movie. He eviscerated that movie. He was like, man, that was just a movie waiting. No, how he put it, it was a theme song that needed a movie to go along with it, and that's it. It was just the movie was horrible. It was this, that, and he had all his points lined up, and they got around to me to ask me, did I see it? And I was like, yeah, I saw it. And they're like, yeah, you agree with that? And I just looked at it. I'm like, no, I don't. I love the movie, and I'm explaining why I loved the movie. And every point I made, they had a counter. And I say they because the other cats in there, they joined in on the fun. They were like, no, man, that part didn't make any sense, because yada, yada, yada. I'm like, my God, it's a movie. They trying to put real world logic to a movie. And that's a concept that I never understood when it came to watching movies, reviewing movies, or enjoying movies. I don't go into movies thinking real world logic. Can somebody survive that fall? Can somebody survive 5 gunshots and all this other stuff? I don't care about that. I just want to be entertained. I know it's fake. It's fake. It's a movie. So I just didn't understand it. But anyways, yeah, that was from that moment on, every movie that came out and we would talk about in video class or video club, it was nobody wanted to hear my opinion. I guess deep down, that's why I began to do this show. I'm gonna give my opinion one way or the other. I'm create my own show. There you have it. That's the nucleus of the KB Radio Network. I I couldn't get my opinion across back in 1996 about Mission Impossible. There you have it. But no, I really loved the movie, and like I said, story number two. I went to go see it with my dad. Now my dad, he watched the TV show, when it originally aired back in 1966. And he was a big fan of the TV show. And so after the movie was over, we're heading home, and he was like, "Man, I did not like that. I didn't like the movie." And I'm like, "Wow, you didn't?" I'm like, "You didn't? Why you ain't like the movie?" And he was like, his whole team died at the beginning. Spoilers for a 30-year-old movie. But yeah, the whole team died at the beginning. I didn't like that. So he basically checked out within the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie because his team, the original team, died in the beginning. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, well, that was the point, that was the point. It was supposed to be shock. And I understand his point he was making. He was like, Mission Impossible is about the team. It's about the team accomplishing this mission. But no, it was more about Tom Cruise. And so when he explained it, it made sense. I was like, okay, I get your point. I'm not attached to the original source material, so I didn't get that feeling. But I respected his. One, because he was my dad, and two, he made a good point. Them dudes at school, no, I didn't respect because they were coming up with some outlandish, dumb stuff. Had they had a logical reason not to like the movie, I would be with it. That's with anybody. That's why at the end of every show I ask, what did you think of the movie or whatever. I just want a logical reason why you liked it or not. Not to judge or anything, but I just won't lie because you might prove me wrong. I might see something in your review or your thoughts, your opinion. I'm like, yeah, you make a good point. It didn't happen before. It's happened multiple times. I've been talked out of it when I really sat down and thought about what somebody had said. I'm like, well, that makes sense why they didn't like it, But overall, I liked Mission Impossible. I really did. The first movie, I just loved the espionage aspect of it, the spy thriller of it all. Not so much for the action, because it wasn't that much action, aside from of course, the third act big showdown and the scene in that little restaurant with the aquarium. And that wasn't really action. That was just Tom Cruise jumping out of a window, outrunning a waterfall, and Tom Cruise rappelling out of that vent and coming 3 centimeters off the floor. And that was it. It really wasn't that much action, but it was a good story. I liked the story. And so, yes, the original Mission Impossible, which came out in 1996, that gets the number 5 ranking on my list. Coming up at number 4 was the most recent up to this point release out of this franchise, and it is Dead Reckoning Part 1, which came out in 2023. And I don't know why we still call it part. Should we still call it Part 1? Because there won't be a Part 2, because the next film is The Final Reckoning. But the reason that happened, it was supposed to be Dead Reckoning Part 2, but it wasn't well received, financially. So they had to kind of go in and reshoot it and do all of these other things. But I actually liked the movie. I thought it was a fun ride. Now, going back to what I said about Mission Impossible 2, and Lord knows I hate comparing Mission Impossible 2 to Dead Reckoning, but I got to in this sense. Remember when I said that it was too much action to the point where it got boring? That's what Dead Reckoning Part 1 was. It was way too much action. And that's crazy coming out of my mouth, but it was a lot of action. It didn't really push the story along. It had a through line, it had a story, and it was interesting, with the AI, which is poignant for the times. That's the villain here. You got Esai Morales as the villain from Ethan Hunt's past coming to haunt him and disrupt him and all this here. That was cool. I liked all that. The addition of Haley Atwell in this cast, Vanessa Kirby in the cast. You had some new additions. The return of Kittredge from the first film, returning in this film, and there was a lot working for it. Like I said, it was good. In no sense I'm trying to convince either you or myself that it was bad. I loved Dead Reckoning Part 1, but it was just way too much action. It was like action set piece, story, action set piece, story, action set piece, set piece, story. And it was just not enough time for the story to breathe before we got another big action sequence. And trust me, I love to see Tom Cruise almost kill himself. It is fun to watch on the big screen. It is super exciting. But after a while, I want to see the story play out. And it didn't really play out. Now, I know it was originally set as a part 1, so it kind of left you hanging, kind of left you on a cliffhanger. So, I excuse a lot of the open-endedness of the story, because I know we're getting a continuation of it, but it was just, I don't know, man. I just wish it was a little bit more story to it, as opposed of this being beaten over the head with all of this action. And let me clear it up though. When I say too much action, I'm an action nut junkie, just fanatic. I love action, but you can condense it. I'm not saying that action shouldn't be in it. It's an action movie. But I'm saying the scene shouldn't last 30 to 35, 40 minutes long scenes of this car chase. Even though the car chase was adrenaline filled, it was exciting, it was even funny. It was a lot going on in that car scene and car chase scene there. But it was, like I said, a lot. It was a lot. And after a while, you get kind of like, oh my God, will you crash the car already? Or, you know what I'm saying? Find a way to get out of this. But overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It was well made, well shot, beautiful, beautiful. Krista McCory, once again, who directed this one, he knows how to shoot these movies. It looks gorgeous. But yeah, it lands at number 4 on the list, and that's not bad. That's not bad. I was just hoping it would have been something more. And my last point on Dead Reckoning Part 1, I kind of hinted to it earlier. Another reason why it kind of falls out of the top 3, I guess you could say, it's the first film where Tom Cruise just felt old. He just felt so old, Not in the action sense, because he was doing the action, he was doing the stunts, he was doing everything, but just his face, he just looked old. And it was unbelievable for him standing next to Haley Atwell, who is, just drop dead gorgeous, and he looks like this old man, and that was the first time I felt that way. Oddly enough, watching the trailer for The Final Reckoning, he doesn't look that old. I don't know why he looked old in Dead Reckoning Part 1, but he looks rejuvenated in The Final Reckoning, oddly enough. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just looking at it crazy, because I am crazy, but that's my thing. But anyways, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is number 4 on my list. Coming in at number 3 is the only Mission Impossible film not to be released in the summer. This film was released in December, around Christmas. It is Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. This came out in 2011, and it is directed by Brad Bird in his first live action directorial debut. Brad Bird is a animation director. Now, he is a awesome animation director. He directed The Iron Giant. He directed Ratatouille, and most notably, he directed The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2. So he is a fantastic animation director. And so when they announced Brad Bird was directing the new the new Mission Impossible film back in 2011, or I guess it was 2010 when they made that announcement, I was like, what? What is it going to be animated? I'm like, why Brad Bird? If anybody can direct this a new Mission Impossible movie, Brad Bird. And then, oh, it's not coming out in the summer. It's coming out in December. Oh, that's not a good sign. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. I'm like, oh, they just dumping it somewhere. This is not going to work. Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol at one point was my favorite. It was that good. It was one of the most rewatchable of the Mission Impossible films. Still is. It's still very rewatchable. And I can't believe the dude pulled it off. Now, he went on to direct Tomorrowland, which was horrible. And now he's back to animation. But he nailed it with Mission Impossible. This is the one, I would say the only one, in my opinion, that felt spy. It felt just pure spy movie. Not action. It felt like a spy movie that just happened to have action in it and some cool action sequence. This is the film that you had Tom Cruise hanging off of the Burj Khalifa, or whatever it's called, in Dubai, the tallest building in the world. You had that giant snowstorm, sandstorm sequence that was phenomenal. I love that scene. I was blown away by this movie. It just felt cool. It felt spy. It felt like a James Bond film. It felt like Tom Cruise was James Bond in this movie. I thought it was well directed, well acted. The action was great. Everything worked. The plot was good. The villain was good, with the blowing up of the Kremlin and Russia and all this here. The IMF being framed, Ethan Hunt being framed for it, and all this. It was great. I thought it was a really, really well put together addition to this franchise. It is still tops, as you can see, is number 3. It just couldn't get past the remaining 2 on this list, and this was the movie. In case y'all was wondering when I was going to reveal what movie that had me all in a tizzy in my previous recordings, this was the one. I actually, when I first put the list together, I had this at number 5 or 6. I think I had it at 6. I think it was at 6. No, I had it at 5. I'm sorry. I had it at 5. And I said, nah. And it was back and forth between this one and Rogue Nation, actually. Because I had Rogue Nation higher. Rogue Nation was at 3. And and when I talked myself, like I said, when I went to speak the words out, I was like, wait, no, idiot. You like this more than you like that. That would not be at number 6. So I had to move it and shift it around. And as I'm speaking it now, it all makes sense. I feel like a weight is off my shoulders. I don't know why. It's just the small victories, people. But yes, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol was excellent. I really, really enjoyed it. And it lands at number 3 on my list of the top Mission Impossible films. Coming in at number 2 was I know it's going to be a bit of a shock. Once again, this was another one that never moved. This was always at 2. Always at 2. Just like number 1 was always at 1. But this one I know is going to cause a lot of head scratching because it's not well received. You know, when you go and Google other people's rankings of Mission Impossible films, this is way lower. This is like the second worst next to Mission Impossible 2 on a lot of people's list. But I strongly disagree. Coming in at number 2, it is none other than the film that saved this franchise, that gave it a shot of adrenaline straight to the heart. Mission Impossible 3, which came out on May the 5th, 2006. This one is directed by J.J. Abrams. And I don't know what it is, people. I can't put my finger on why I love part 3 so much, but part 3 just had a great mix to me, and it just worked. The number one reason, I have a few points, but the number one point is the villain, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Rest in peace. He is phenomenal in this movie. I mean, awesome in this movie. This is the one villain out of all of the Mission Impossible film villains. This is the one villain I believe beat Ethan Hunt. He beat him. Ethan Hunt got lucky at the end of this movie. Philip Seymour Hoffman, his character of Owen, can't think of the character's last name, but Owen, he destroyed Ethan Hunt. He was not only physically opposing, but he was mentally opposing. And when I say physically, when Philip Seymour Hoffman was announced as the villain, like every other thing that they announce in all type of films, I questioned it. And as much as I love, or at least loved, Philip Seymour Hoffman, I thought he was one of the greats, man. Philip Seymour Hoffman could do no wrong. I didn't really see him as a Mission Impossible villain. You know what I'm saying? He just didn't fit that mold in my mind. But my God, you want to talk about chilling? You want to talk about a villain who literally brought Ethan Hunt to his limit. Ethan Hunt in this film was done for. I don't think y'all understand how close Ethan Hunt was done for in this movie. He was done. He got so lucky. It's unbelievable. Just the first 5 minutes of this movie. I remember around this time, 2006, my daughters were, what were they, 5 and 3 at the time? And I went to go see this by myself. And my wife wanted to see it. And she was going, I was at work. I think she was off. And she was going to go, but she was going to bring the girls. And I was like, no. No, you can't bring them. The first 5 minutes are too intense. It was too intense for me. It was so intense that cold open threw any doubt I had about Philip Seymour Hoffman as the villain out the window. The fact that Ethan Hunt, and this is probably the best performance by Tom Cruise as this character in this film. Ethan Hunt went through what they call it, the 7 stages of grief or whatever. He went through them in that scene, and Philip Seymour Hoffman had just this stone face, this demeanor that just, I don't know, man. It was chilling. I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. It is one of the most intense movies in this franchise. The plot was great. The MacGuffin made no sense. The rabbit's foot. Yeah, nobody still don't know what the rabbit's foot is, but who cares? it was still cool. This was J.J. Abrams' feature film debut as a director. This is his first film. Of course, we all know he went on to direct Star Trek. Then he went and did Star Wars and The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker. The less said about that, the better. But he went on to have a pretty decent career after this. But this is where he started off. And before this, he did Laws. He also did Alias, and that's what got him this job. Tom Cruise binge watched Alias, which was a TV show that was on ABC, I believe, with Jennifer Garner, and pretty good, decent show. I didn't watch that whole show. I think I watched like the first season and a half of it, but it was good, and I can see why Tom Cruise wanted him to direct this film. Going by how that show is structured, is pretty much Mission Impossible, just with a female character. And man, he knocked it out the park. This was so good. This is so good. This was one of the most rewatchable. This is the second most rewatchable film in the franchise. Of course, number one is the most rewatchable, but this was still is one of my favorites in this franchise. It just had every element that I wanted out of this movie, and coming off of Mission Impossible 2, is you had a pretty low bar to clear, to be 100% honest. But you didn't have to do much here, but they did way more than what we got in part 2, and that is greatly appreciated. But for anything, even if you don't like Tom Cruise, you don't like the Mission Impossible franchise, I would say check out Mission Impossible 3 just for Philip Seymour Hoffman, greatest villain in this franchise, hands down. I don't care. Come at me. He is amazing in this movie. So, without further ado, we only have one film left. And I think this is universally understood. I think this is universally agreed upon because it's phenomenal. It is great. This is the greatest Mission Impossible film ever made. It is none other than Mission Impossible Fallout. Number one Mission Impossible film to date. We'll see how the final reckoning plays out. But man, Fallout, bruh. Fallout, directed by Christopher McQuarrie, came out in 2018. We had every single thing work in this movie. Just outside of Mission Impossible itself, this was just great. This was just amazing to me. I loved everything about this movie. The acting was the best in the franchise. Tom Cruise did phenomenal. The action was top notch. The story was top notch. The villain was top notch. The score was phenomenal. I still listen to the Fallout score on Spotify. It's on my in my playlist. I love Fallout. Fallout has Henry Cavill as the villain. Henry Cavill. Now, this is what makes it special by just saying that. Henry Cavill, at the same time he's making this movie as this murderous villain over at Warner Brothers, over there in DC, he was Superman. He was Kal-El. He was Clark Kent. He was Superman. And you switch over here to this movie and you see Superman with a mustache just murking folk, Speaking of the mustache, this will go down as in history as the greatest mustache in film history. He had to grow a mustache for this role. But at the same time, he was filming Justice League over at DC and Warner Brothers, and they had to do reshoots. So he had to go off to do reshoots. They Paramount Pictures and the producers of Mission Impossible Fallout said, "Well, you can't shave the mustache." It's well, I'm playing Superman. Superman doesn't have a mustache. And so, what you want me to do? So Warner Brothers got involved. They tried to get Paramount to allow him to shave the mustache. They were willing to pay for CGI to put a CGI mustache on him for scenes and this, that, and the third. And they said no. It is in the he's contractually obligated to have that mustache. So Warner Brothers instead decided to CGI remove the mustache for the scenes that he was shooting for Justice League. And when you watch Justice League, not the Zack Snyder cut that's on Max, but the Josh Whedon theatrical release, which is horrible. But if you watch certain scenes, you can see that he has the artificial lip when he talks. The top lip don't move because they had to digitally remove his mustache. But yeah, he had a mustache for this. But anyways, he was a beast. When I talked about Philip Seymour Hoffman's villainous turn in part 3, and how he was physically opposing to Ethan Hunt, and that's because he was just brutal with the way he was beating Hunt. But Henry Cavill is a big dude, of course. We all pretty much have seen him as Superman and whatnot. The dude is not small, and Tom Cruise he's about my height. Don't let the movies fool you. He's about 5'7" or something like that. He is not a big man, and he's standing next to Henry Cavill, who's about 6'2", with 5, well, maybe 3% body fat and all this here. The dude is amazing. He's a Greek god, but anywho's just physically imposing and can beat you half to death, and you believe it. You have that scene in the nightclub in the fight when Henry Cavill takes off his shirt and loads up his guns, his arms, cocks his arms to get in the fight. That was just brutal. You tell he will brutally beat you to death. He don't need a weapon, and it was just cool. And then I think this was the first time in the series where we have a continuation from a previous film. This follows Rogue Nation, I believe. Yeah, it follows Rogue Nation, and we have a continuation of Solomon Lane, the villain from Rogue Nation. He's a part of this, and it's a whole thing. And I just love the storytelling here. I loved how it's a continuation of that story, yet it kind of sets itself apart. Oh man, this was just a real structured movie. I mean, perfectly structured. And I think that's why Dead Reckoning Part 1 kind of suffered, because it is far from this movie. Coming behind Fallout, nah, that is a tough task. That is a hard that's a hard nut to crack right there. So I feel sorry for I felt sorry for Dead Reckoning Part 1, because everything worked. This is as close to perfection as you can get as far as an action spy movie is concerned. Awesome movie. Fallout is the #1 Mission Impossible film. Just to run through the list again: number 7, Mission Impossible 2; number 6, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation; number 5, the original Mission Impossible from 1996; number 4, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1; number 3, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol; at number 2, Mission Impossible 3; and at number 1, Mission Impossible Fallout. Yes, man. Mission Impossible. Ethan Hunt. Let's see how the final reckoning goes. Like I said, they're rumored that this is the final mission for Ethan Hunt. We'll see, man. We'll see. Until Tom Cruise get tired of hanging off of planes and jumping off of buildings and you know, and all this other foolishness he do, ride motorcycles off of mountains and jumping on moving trains. I don't think he's going to stop. I really don't. The dude is a junkie, and he's an adrenaline junkie. He's an action junkie. He needs this. I think he needs this to live. And so I don't see him stopping. I really don't. But we'll see. We'll see how the final reckoning plays out this upcoming weekend. I would like to know, what is your list? What do you rank the number one Mission Impossible film? Is it Fallout? Is it part 2? Is it part 3? Is it Ghost Protocol? I don't know why I said part 2. I know part 2 is on nobody's list. John Woo don't even have that at number 1. It is on nobody's list. But I would love to know your number one Mission Impossible film. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for this show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Everybody, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube, and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me as we broke down the rankings of all Mission Impossible films in preparation for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.